This is a call to action, and I'm your host, Alex Habersham, coming to you from a lot of places. But I want to welcome everybody on the internet, TV, radio, and other lands that's listening to this dynamic show. And I'm so excited today to be featuring this guy that I've known for too long, but I saw the potential in him a long time ago because he's a writer. Many of you all may not know, but I used to also publish a newspaper, the Macon Courier, back in the dark ages when I was a younger man, and he too was a younger man. And this person is none other than Harold Michael Harvey. And he's a prolific writer and a renowned author, and we'll talk some about all of the great books that he has written, particularly from a historical perspective. But we want to talk specifically about his last endeavor, which is to kind of acknowledge, celebrate, and inform the community about the very first Black City Council persons in Macon, Georgia, that served on the Macon City Council. And I didn't realize that it's been 50 years. I guess I must have been about 9 or 10 back then. But 50 years ago, then that's when we had these individuals to be elected to city council. And Mr. Harvey Arthur Harvey thought it would not be robbery to commemorate that activity. And he has put together a phenomenal program and information to kind of commemorate and highlight the significance of their being elected to city council 50 years ago. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Alex. Good to see you, man. And
Yes.
yeah, we do go back longer than we either one of us want to remember.
That is very, very true. Well, let's come out and shoot. Just telling us a little bit about yourself. Although you're up in Atlanta with the top dogs and the heavy dogs and the big boys, but I believe you know a little something about Unionville. So tell us a little something about yourself.
Well, I'm just simply Harold from Unionville. Grew up over there in Unionville as a teenager and went off to school and came back and joined hands with my scoutmaster, Frank Johnson, and we organized a Unionville Improvement Association that, worked to improve that community, get to the streets paved, got that recreational center over there that's named after Frank Johnson. And that's basically me. Of course, shortly after I finished Tuskegee Institute with a degree in political science, I went to work for you at the Macon Courier. Um, Writing was always my passion. That was the thing in my heart that I enjoyed doing. I never could make any money at it, so I left Macon in 1980 and went to law school and practiced law for a few decades. And when I had to end my practice, I started back to writing. I did what the disciples did. When Jesus was gone, they went back to fishing. So I went back to writing. And a lot of my life experiences there in Macon and Unionville uh, tend to show up in the books that I have written. I've written 7 books at this point.
Okay, but
So that's basically who I am. Just Harold from Unionville.
yeah, yeah, but very briefly, let's give the title and a brief synopsis before we delve into the 50-year celebration, all the activities and the books surrounding that. Just tell us your books right quick. Give the title and a very, very quick snippet of all of them.
Paper Puzzle was the very first one. It is a novel, a fictitious book written set in Middle Georgia, Macon, Georgia. I tell the story, it's a murder mystery, and I tell that story through the eyes of 2 newspaper journalists, one white who works for the daily newspaper in town, and one black who works for the weekly newspaper in town. And you might be able to read in there and discover a publisher of a black newspaper who might have some characteristics of A.C. Haversham.
Okay.
And I actually, for the white newspaper, I actually use a caricature of the black publisher of the Atlanta Daily World. You know, so although the publisher of that paper was white, I used caricatures of the person that I knew in real life as who published the Atlanta Daily World.
Right.
So that's Paper Puzzle. It's a murder mystery, had to get these two journalists together in order to solve this crime that had been going around in Middle Georgia at the time. And of course, because of the racial dynamics of the day back in the 1970s, there was no meaningful social or professional communication between the two. So we had to get over that, and that's what that book is all about. And then I wrote a book, Justice in the Round, which is a collection of essays on the American jury system. I wrote it as a result of that Trayvon Martin decision and that loud music case down in Jacksonville, Florida, where that young man was shot. I think the day of Thanksgiving, 2015 or 16ish. I didn't understand, I had a legal degree, but I didn't understand those jury verdicts. So I knew that the public probably had some problems with them. So I wrote a book trying to explain the inner workings of that process. Um, then I think there's I did a book on Reverend C.T. Vivian, who was Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. He was also my neighbor for 27 years, and he was worked under Dr. King for a number of years. I think he left the organization shortly after the signing of the 1965 Voters' Rights Act. And I asked him one day, well, why did you leave SLC and go out to do other things at that point in time? And he says, well, I told Martin that he had achieved all that we could achieve for our people. We had gotten the discrimination bill passed signed the year before. And then in 65, they got the Voters' Rights Act. And he said that I thought that movement had done what it was designed to do for our people. And then we had to go out and develop programs that will enable our people to come into, full citizenship. So he passed in 2020, the year of the pandemic. And I spent about 2 weeks in my writing studio where I am right now, and I wrote of all of these personal, intimate encounters that I had had with him over 27 years. On my 50th birthday, C.T. Vivian walked down the hill and had a birthday dinner with me. And we talked all evening until 11 o'clock, and I walked him back up the hill. Over my shoulder is one of C.T. Vivian's ties, and C.T. Vivian and Ignomia Clayton, Ms. Clayton is fixing his tie for him. I have that exact tie. His daughter on his death gave me that tie. And a few weeks later, she called me and said, I actually have a picture of Dad in that tie. Would you like to have the picture? And I told her that I would. And I decided that, I couldn't wear his tie. I don't think that I could stand in his shoes. I couldn't take his tie and tie that around my neck. I don't think, I've earned that place. So I framed the tie and I framed the picture along with it. And so that's sort of like a guiding light to me. Every day I come into this space to write, that sort of is something that I look that inspires me. But I wrote a book about all the personal encounters and things that he taught me. I would ask him, I said, what were you guys thinking when you did so and so and so and so during the movement day? And then he would give me the backstories. And I didn't think it was right to write about or talk about those things while he was alive. But now that he's gone, that information need to go on. And so I did that. Then I wrote a book about baseball. I love baseball. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. If that was one thing other than writing, I wanted to play professional baseball. So I wrote this book on the Negro Leagues. I also wrote that during the pandemic. So I did two books during the pandemic. And uh, um, there's a book I wrote of 163-year history of the Bethel CME Church up on Pinona. And I wrote that book because I grew up in Bethel and it had an outstanding history. The church was founded on January the 1st, 1863. And as you know, that was the day that the Emancipation Proclamation was to take effect. I wrote that church history from 1863 to 2023. And then I followed that with the Fantasy Five, which is why we are here today. You know,
Right.
so I wrote about these five individuals, Willie C. Hill, Dolores Brooks, Vernon Colbert, Julius Vincent, and Reverend Dr. Eddie D. Smith, who became the first blacks elected to the Macon City Council in 1975. They were sworn in on December the 9th, 1975. And so this year, on December the 12th of 1975, we are going to hold two events. One is a proclamation reading honoring their contribution to the political landscape there in Macon. Mayor Lester has agreed to present them with a proclamation in Commissioner's Chambers at 10 o'clock on December the 12th. And then we're going to reconvene at noontime for a luncheon to further honor them at the Tubman Museum in the Richard Cowell Room at the Tubman African American Museum on Cherry Street. Now, the event at the Tubman is the luncheon is a ticketed event. The tickets cost $55, and in addition to the ticket, is a wonderful meal and being enriched by all of this history and legacy. You'll also get a copy of the Fantasy Five, the book that I wrote on
Wow.
these five courageous people.
Wow, that is so important. So let's talk very, very briefly. If you want, and I remember them, I remember, and I can call Dolores Brooks, Vernon Culver, Eddie D. Smith, Willie Hill, and what's the big guy's name?
Vincent, Julius Vincent,
Julius Vincent. So yeah, I
had
remember
that
them very
big
well.
baritone voice.
Yeah, that was a great day, and those were great times because finally, let me tell you something, representation is important and our history is important. And I think we owe it to them, not only for the sacrifices that they made, but also for the difference that they made in our community to try to fight for freedom for all of us. So just kind of walk through each one of them briefly to say a little something about them. And then we want to make sure that we let people know how they can attend the event. They can come to the proclamation, of course, at 10 o'clock on the 12th for free. But we look, hey, all of us need to play a role in acknowledging and remembering our history. So we encourage the entire community to come to the reading of that proclamation and to come to the luncheon. So let's walk through those personalities briefly for each one.
I will start with Willie Hill. Willie Hill was a school teacher. He taught over at Appleton High School. He taught government social studies. One of his students is David Lucas, who now serves as a state senator from Bibb County. He taught Lucas at Appleton, and in addition to being a school teacher, he was a member of the Bethel Semi Church that I talked about just a moment ago, and he was on the trustee board. Now, the trustees in the Methodist Church, they maintain the church property. And so when he was elected to city council and they asked him what committee did he want to be on, he said he wanted to be on public properties. And so he chaired the public properties committee. And it just goes to show you how, while we could not participate in government and politics in the mainstream back in the day, but our churches, our schools, and our churches gave us opportunities to learn how to do things and to become leaders. And he took the lessons that he had learned by being a trustee and handling the property up there at Bethel Semi Church onto city government and did a good job as the chairman of the Public Properties Committee. Now you had Julius Vincent. Julius had this great baritone voice, and before he went to council, you could always catch him at some church would invite him to sing on their Men's Day or their Women's Day program or church anniversaries, and it was always a pleasure to hear him sing. He was an insurance agent before he ran for council, and he continued to sell insurance once he won that. He had an interest in police brutality. He had seen several incidents of police roughing up people in the Pleasant Hill community where he lived, and so he worked to become chairman of the Public Safety Committee on the council, and that's sort of like how he got to that committee because he was saying things about public safety that you heard the kids in the streets in 2021 and 22 and 23 talking about. And he was for that type of police reform. He said we need to train them better and how to de-escalate situations. Now, that term sort of like lost its interest, but in the last 4 or 5 years, that's what we hear a lot. Well, in 1975, Julius Vincent was talking about police need to learn how to de-escalate a situation when they come on the scene. So that was Julius Vincent. And then you had Vernon Colbert, um, who was he was retired from the United States Postal Service, where he actually held a supervisor or managerial position in the for the post office there in Bibb County. But he had retired from that when he decided to run. Prior to him running, or prior to him moving over into the Vine and Circle community, where he was a neighbor of Willie Hill, he had lived in Tenno Heights. And in living in Tenno Heights, he actually had formed a Boy Scout troop back in the 50s and late 50s, early 60s. He was a scoutmaster of a troop out of Tenno Heights. And he was a one-term council member. I think he's probably most misunderstood of all the council people because the approach he would take to matters, where you would have the four other Black council members kind of united on an issue, he would always side with the other side. But before they took the final vote, I did the record. And so we all got upset with him because he was on the other side. But when they took the final vote, he voted along with the other side. And you have to realize strategically it was a 15-member board. So you had 5 Black representatives, which means that they only needed to pull 3 votes to carry any measure that came before the council. And so now the other councilman was Dolores Brooks. She was a school librarian who had worked in campaigns for various white candidates throughout the state and in Macon and Bibb County. And she ran in a seat that was actually 60% white and 40% Black. It was a seat that we didn't expect that we would pick up. But because she could go into both communities and campaign, and people just loved her, she campaigned for that seat and won. And then we had I'm missing somebody. Oh, Eddie Smith. He was also a school librarian. And the thing about Eddie, and he was a pastor of Macedonia Baptist Church, which it wasn't the big Macedonia that it is today. And I think it was still, I think it was on the corner of Second Avenue and somewhere else. And it was a small church. He was the youngest of the council members. I think he was 29 or 30 when he went into office. And he only served 3 years. In his third year, as he began to expand his reach in government, he was the chairman of the Employee and Development Committee, and he looked out for the interests of the workers for the city. And he was always pulling for them and trying to get the city to pay them more money and give them more insurance, more time off, better working conditions. Um, but then after the third year, his church had grown and he was making a little bit more money, so he was able to finally afford a nicer home for his family. And he bought a home in the Cherokee Heights neighborhood, which was out of his district. And so Eddie, in his third year in office, decided that he would resign because he was no longer living in the third ward where he had been elected from. But Gene Dunwoody, who was a city council president at that time, tried to get him to not resign. He says, I'll figure out a way that you can live in Cherokee Heights and still represent this district. And Eddie says, no, the people in the third ward need to know that their council member comes home to the third ward at night. And so he resigned. And when he resigns, we get the sixth man. The sixth man is Henry Ficklin. Henry Ficklin runs to finish out that 1 year left on Eddie Smith's term. He has two candidates opposing him, and he wins and finishes out that year. And then the following year is a new election cycle. He runs again, and that begins this decade-long tenure of Henry Ficklin on both the City Council and County Commission. And I think he served some time on the school board too, and is now the mayor's director of community affairs there in Macon County under the consolidated government. So those are the five. There's a little capsule of who they are and so forth. I can't hear you.
Very good. Yeah, you. I guess I need to turn my mic on so you can hear me. Well, I hope we realize the importance and the significance and the impact of those individuals. And let me tell you why it's important. Because, and I think it's timely, because we need to know, remember, memorialize, and tell our history. And what I'm hopeful of is that there are some young people in our community who read those stories, who understand those stories, who reflect on those individuals and the role that they played in advancing our community, and that they are motivated, to assume those positions, because we need responsible people. And then the other thing, look, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that uh, politicians make policies. And if we want our community to grow from a policy perspective, then we need to have good, responsible, concerned, and interested individuals assuming those positions. And much of the plight that we are now faced as a people, comes as a result of our not understanding the role that politics play in our community. You have, for example, in one of the last elections, recent election, you had 30,000 registered voters not to vote. 30,000 people, you know. And then, so if in fact you don't engage in the process, then you shouldn't complain about anything that's happening. So I really applaud you. I applaud you. And then I'm encouraging, see, because what you didn't fully emphasize is that this is also a book. So you need to you need to tell them that too. That now you're telling this story, verbally, but then they are able, to purchase the book, and if you don't see it, I know you're looking for one, but if people see it, we'll project it on the screen. You can just send me the cover,
Okay.
and we'll project it on the screen as you talk about it. So, Mr. Harvey, Attorney Harvey, is a prolific author, and I just want to congratulate you for being historical. Because there are people talking about, people are saying that they are trying to erase our history. So now those volumes and those books become even more important, because, a historyless people is a hopeless people. And then if we don't know our history, then that contributes to our being hopeless, and we don't want that to happen. And it can be addressed. And gestures like what you made in writing those books play a role, really play a role in educating our community. So let's recap the events and when, where, how, and how to get tickets.
All right, December the 12th is a big day in Macon. 10 o'clock down at City Hall in the Commissioner's Chambers. We're going to have a proclamation reading. Event is free and open to the public. We want to pack that assembly hall and come out and honor these people because, as you say, it's all about the history. The reason I want to do this is because of those efforts to rewrite our history. And of course, we always talk about if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. Well, somebody else has told our story, and they didn't tell our story the right way.
Yep.
I guarantee you, if you read this 50-year history that I wrote on those five, and it will not be the history that was being written contemporaneously in the local daily paper at the time that all of this was happening. But I saw it too. And so I wrote their history based upon what my eyes saw and what our community saw, wished for, and hoped for, and dreamed would happen, and not knowing that it would happen. So come out and support that at the bare minimum, fill those chambers. The families have been notified. Many of them have agreed. Everybody except the Hill family and the Colbert family have agreed to have representatives there and participate in this event, and we want to lavish love on them for what their ancestors, their descendants did for our community. And then at noontime, you can start assembling at around 11:30 over at the Tubman Museum. We'll have some hot cider, and it's probably going to be a cold day on the 12th. We'll have some hot cider and some coffee, and hopefully a little music, and you can come in and get to meet and chat with each other, and the dinner will be served at 12 o'clock. That is a ticket event. It costs $55. And in addition to entrance to the luncheon, you will get a copy of Fantasy Five, the book that I wrote about these five courageous historical figures in Macon and Bibb County. Because if we don't tell this story 50 years after it happened, Alex and I won't be here 50 years from now. I would like to be, and I know Alex would too, but we know what life is about. So if we don't tell this story now, if you don't come and enjoy it on the 50th anniversary, it doesn't give our succeeding generations 50 years from now to call attention to what these five did 100 years from that day. So
Right.
let's honor them on this 50th anniversary. Come out and partake at a bare minimum at the 10 o'clock proclamation reading. But also we have a delicious meal catered by Chef Michaels at the Tubman. You will enjoy a good meal, a good book, and we have a number of speakers who are going to talk about different aspects of what life and politics and business was like in Macon and during that era. Uh, Alex Habersham is going to speak. Herbert Nod is going to speak. C. Jack Ellis is going to talk about what Hope running for mayor in 1975, also 50 years ago. First time that a Black person in Macon ran for mayor. He's going to bridge that gap between 1975 and 1999 when he became the first and only mayor of Macon, Georgia. Macon, Georgia doesn't exist as a city state anymore. It's a consolidated government now. So there'll never be another mayor of Macon, Georgia. Um, so he'll speak. And we're also going to give honors to people who made it happen. And those two individuals were David Lucas as state representative and who's now state senator, and Judge Billy Randall, who's at that time was state representative Billy Randall. Those two legislators dropped a bill in the hopper that drew those district lines, enabling those five individuals to have a chance to run and win a seat on the city council. So we'll honor them, and we're going to honor Elaine Lucas for her decade tenure on the in local government, and also Reverend Dr. Henry Ficklin for his decade-long service in city government. I call Henry the sixth man because
Yeah.
he came in and
Right.
finished out the term of the five, or
Right.
one of the five.
Right. Well, that's so very important now. Where can they get tickets?
You can get tickets at haroldmichaelharvey.com. If you go to my website, I'm a .com, my whole name, haroldmichaelharvey.com. The landing page will bring you up with, it'll show you all the books I've written, and it will show you whether you could buy a ticket, or if you want to help sponsor the event, there's a silver, gold, and a bronze sponsorship level, and it gives you, it spell out the things you get if you was a sponsor at that level, or if you just want to buy an individual ticket. So it's haroldmichaelharvey.com. I'll be in Macon tomorrow. Come down to the Tubman Museum. 11:30 and meet with me and buy your ticket if you want to get a ticket from me personally.
Okay.
I'll sign it on the back of the ticket.
Right. Okay, this is a call to action. I'm your host, Alex Habersham, having interviewed Mr. Harold Michael Harvey, a prolific author who thought it would not be robbery to commemorate some of the individuals who were the first African Americans to serve on city council in Macon, Georgia. That was 50 years ago. And I just applaud him. And I'm telling you that I applaud you, Harold,
Thank
for
you.
thinking it would not be robbery to commemorate these individuals, particularly in today's time in society when we're having problems with everybody not emphasizing and not realizing the significance of being familiar with our history. So we will put the QR code on the screen in addition to showing pictures of all these individuals that you talked about. This is a call to action. I'm your host, Alex Habersham. See you on the 12th
All
at the
right.
reading of the proclamation and the luncheon. Have a great day.
www.makingblackpages.com